you were tested this week? Yvonne, how'd it go? Did you pass? Did you pass? All right. Well, you must be. You're here. All right. I think in all actuality, probably all of you were tested at some level. And I want to talk about some things today. And I promised you, I'm not going to preach long today because you're going to help me preach today. Okay? In a few minutes, I'm going to actually give the floor to you. I want you to be thinking about something God has done for you, how that God used a very difficult circumstance in your life, or an unusual circumstance, and how that God, you didn't really understand it at the time, maybe, but God done something in you in the midst of your trial. All of us here probably know the story of Joseph. Joseph was the youngest brother of Jacob, and his brothers didn't like him at all. They didn't like him at all. In fact, they didn't like him so much, they devised a plan to get rid of him. They actually put him in a pit, and it was just an amazing series of events, how they sold him as a slave to the Ishmaelites. And through the course of this event, Joseph really didn't do anything to deserve it. Yeah, he was a little bit dreamy, a little bit like that, and it made them feel, threatened or whatever. And so he gets sold to the Ishmaelites. He ends up, fast forward the story, into the court of Pharaoh. Pharaoh's wife decides that she wants to have a relationship with him, and Joseph had his integrity. He knew it wasn't right, and so she lied and said that he tried to rape her, and he ends up in jail. Well, here he is, minding his own business, trying to do the right thing. You ever felt like when you was trying to do the right thing, everything went wrong? Man, that is not very much fun, is it? He gets thrown in prison. While he's in prison, he's getting down there with a couple of guys, and there are dreams that are happening, and Joseph interprets those dreams. And those guys made a promise to Joseph, said, I tell you what, when I get out, I'm going to make sure and put a good word for you. And we know the story. They didn't. Joseph stays in jail all this time. Finally, Joseph gets his moment to shine. He tells Pharaoh's dream. He comes out of prison, and Pharaoh is so enamored with Joseph, he makes him his right-hand man, in charge of everything, as his second in command. And here comes famine across the land. Jacob and all of his brothers are starving to death, so they have to go to Egypt to get food. They come there, and you know the story, how he reveals himself to them. After Jacob dies, the brothers get really nervous. And in Genesis chapter 50 and verse 20, they were sure that now that their father had died, that Joseph was going to exact revenge. Because that's the way people are, right? They were sure he was going to exact revenge. And Joseph had one of the most famous responses to this that there ever was. He said, guys, do not be afraid. I'm not going to do anything to you. You see, what you meant to me for evil, God meant for good. There are times when you go through things in your life and it seems like that God must be mad at me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be going through this hell I'm going through, right? Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt like if God really was on my side, I wouldn't be going through all of this chaos and this awful, terrible situation? But sometimes what you can't see and what you don't know is that you are being forged in a fire in order that God may make something wonderful out of you. Because sometimes the best things in your life only come when pressure is applied in your life. Do you agree with that? I I mean, honestly, all of us can look back at times in our life and you thought that you were abandoned, you thought that friends had forsaken you, you thought you were going through the worst time of your life, and you look back now and you realize that you really grew out of that moment. And you're now, you were crying then, but now you're very grateful for that moment because it helped make you the person that you are today. Alright? So let's take a look at what the Apostle Paul says. Let's go ahead and begin in verse 18. Let's read it together if you would with me, please. And I want you to pay attention to the words that I put in bold, okay? Alright, you ready? Here we go. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. Let's stop for just a minute. What that means is that no matter how difficult you are experiencing life right now, that there is no comparison to how bad that is to how good that God can bring out of it. Okay? Know this, that while you're going through hell, God is making deposits on your behalf to show you good. He's doing something in your life, and just be patient because the suffering is going to pay off. Next verse, read with me, please. For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation, that's us, was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of Him who subjected it in hope, because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. Now, that gets a little confusing, so let me just explain a little bit of this to you. Go back to the previous slide, if you would. Let's look at this. The earnest expectation of creation eagerly awaits the revealing of the sons of God. Can anybody here, over the last couple of years, while Haiti's been going through all of the chaos and insecurity, kidnappings and gas crisis and all of this kind of stuff, has any of you actually said this? Said, "Oh Jesus, please come now. Please come now." This is what he's talking about. There's an earnest expectation. We know that there's coming a time when we're going to be united with Christ. Is that right? Do we believe that? All right. But he says there is an eagerness in us when we're going through hell for Jesus to come and bring us out of hell. Isn't that right? Next screen. And he says we were subjected to futility. In other words, we are subjected to things that are broken, that are messed up. We're living in a world as broken people, in a world full of broken people, sometimes even more broken than you. And it's very difficult to navigate. I mean, honestly, you may be working or living right beside somebody who is just an absolute bonehead, right? You can't get along with them. You couldn't give them 1,000 goods and make them happy. Am I right? There are people like this in our life. There are situations in our life that are just futility, all right? But it says, look at this, because the creation will be delivered from the bondage of this corruption, that is this body that continues to deteriorate, into the glorious liberty of the children of God. All right, verse 22, read with me again, please. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. All right, how many moms that have had babies do we have in here? Let me see your hand. Y'all want to give me one of those birth pang groans? Let me tell you about the day. I remember what kind of shirt I was wearing when Michelle delivered our first child, Sasha. And because I remember it so distinctly, because I thought she was going to tear it off of me. I had a flannel button-up shirt on, and one of those labor pains hit her, and she reached up, and I'll tell you, she's just a little thing, but I'm going to tell you, when those birth pains hit, she gained a strength like Superman. I'm telling you right now. She grabbed my shirt. Do something! Because it hurt. It was awful. And, you know, it's almost like I've heard these stories about women that were starting into labor for the first time, and they would say, "Oh no, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to have a baby now." Sorry. It's going to happen whether you want it or not, you know. But have you ever just been so underneath a load of care that you just like, oh, you just feel like you just can't? Guys, when I know this doesn't compare to birth pains, but anyway, we'll try to throw you guys a bone. Have you ever had to pick up something heavy? I remember the first time I ever tried to move our generator. It weighs over 600 pounds. And I had all these skinny Haitians helping me. And there was like 5 or 6 of us. And we lifted that. It was like a collective, you know. You ever feel like that's your life? You ever feel like when you go to prayer, the words just won't work and all you want to do is just say, oh. This is what it's talking about. All right, next turn. Not only that, but we also who have the first fruits of the Spirit, that's us who are believers, even we ourselves groan within ourselves. Listen, we have Jesus, but we still experience the pressure of life, right? It doesn't excuse us. Eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body. In other words, there are times when I get up in the morning, and my arthritis and my back is stiff, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I feel 100 years old today. You know? I just feel 100. And I feel like Ron. And, sorry, Ron. I just had to dig at you. I just had to. And, but anyway, so it says, for we are saved in this hope. What that means is, we are rescued in the hope that we have, that we won't always have to struggle with this physical existence. We're going to get a brand new body. Anybody excited about that besides me? Hallelujah. And that hope is seen is not hope. For why does one still hope for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we eagerly wait for it with perseverance. Perseverance is difficult. Difficult to just struggle through. All right, next. Likewise, the Spirit, look at this. Likewise, the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, also helps us in our weaknesses. For we do not know what we should pray for, as we ought. Remember what I was talking about a while ago? You don't even know how to pray? But the Spirit Himself is making intercessions for us with groanings. Anybody happy about that? I don't know how to pray about some stuff. I'll be honest with you. Because sometimes I'm too close to the situation. Does that make sense? You know, if someone close to me or a situation that's so close to me, I can't see over it, I can't see around it, I can't see through it. But thankfully, the Holy Spirit, He helps us in those moments when we don't have the words to say. Isn't that good? All right, but look what He says. But now He who searches the hearts knows what the mind of the Spirit is, because He makes intercession for the saints according to the will of God. Next. Everybody knows this verse. Oh, wait, I'm not there yet. I want you to notice the words that I highlighted. Birth pains, labors, corruption, groaning, suffering, futility, groans, and weaknesses. None of these words are words that we like. Right? These are hateful, disgusting, terrible words that we don't like to live with, but every one of us have to live with them at some level. But then there's verse 28. Let's read it together and let's read it loud. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to His purpose. Oh, I love this verse. Who knows? Look here. Who knows? We. Who knows? Who knows? We know. And that word is not gnosko, which means we have intellectual knowledge. We have intuitive knowledge. We can perceive and we can trust. The word is eido in the Greek. We can perceive and know that all things. How many things? All things. Good things, bad things, all things. Say all things.
All things.
Turn to your neighbor and tell them, say all things.
All things.
All things work together. The word work together there is an interesting word that particularly English speakers will be familiar with. The word in the Greek is synergio, which is where we get the word synergize, which means when two or more things come together and they work together well and they accomplish a single purpose. All right? He said, all things synergize together. How in the world can the betrayal of my best friend work together, synergize, so that I can know God better, so that I can reveal His purpose in me? How? You see, what we don't understand is that while we're going through it, anytime God calls us to something, He is also doing something in us. It's not just us doing something for you, for someone else, but like for instance, when God asked me to pastor this church, obviously there's an obvious benefit, I hope, to those of you who come here on Sunday and benefit from the ministry of the but God also is doing something on the inside of me. You see, while Yvonne comes and shares his gift for the Lord on the piano on Sunday, and he blesses you, he blesses the heart of the Lord, he is also doing something in Yvonne at the same time. There have been many times when I preached a sermon, and from all indications, most people didn't really care for it all that much. But it done something for me. I want you to receive from it every Sunday, but sometimes I get more out of it than you do. Alright? All things work together for what? For good. Joseph said, what you meant for bad, God meant for good. God uses people, situations, and things, adversity in your life to test your mental, to test your character, to test your integrity. How many of you have ever heard I don't know if y'all have this saying in Haiti. We have it in the United States. A chain is no stronger than its weakest link. Okay? I'm sure you all have a Haitian saying something like that. Anybody know what it is? Something like that? No? Okay, anyway. Well, it was a nice one. Anyway, but here's the thing. You can have every link on the chain very, very strong, but one is weak. And guess what? When the pressure is put on it, when you try to pull something up or whatever, it's going to break because of that weakness, okay? God allows us to go through seasons of trial and temptation and difficulty so that our weakness is addressed. God is not going to leave you. He wouldn't be a good God if He left you without challenging the areas of our weakness. Now, there are some things that I can be tempted with that the temptation will never bother me at all. It won't bother me at all. But then there are other things that those kind of temptations are things that I really need to address. Right? Okay? So, but he says that all things, all of those things work together for good to those who love God. Now, let me tell you what this verse doesn't say. This verse doesn't say that if you have given up on that whole idea, that means you don't love God. No, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means that you haven't come to the revelation as someone who loves God. You haven't come to the revelation of how good God is and how that He is using you, even though you don't realize exactly what He's doing. You don't always realize what He's doing when He's doing it. It's like that song that Mononim sings so well, the Waymaker. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You remember when you were a little boy or a little girl growing up and you thought you would never grow? I mean, you thought you would never grow. You know what? When I was a 9th grader, I was one of the shortest kids in my class. And I wasn't in a class of giants. Okay? When I was 5, I was 5'6" in my freshman year, in my 9th grade year. When I came back for my sophomore year, my 10th grade year, I had grown 6 inches. I was 6 feet tall. And then I grew an additional 4 inches over the next 2 years. I didn't think I was ever going to grow. Everybody else was wearing pants that were too short for them to school because they were growing so fast. And here I am looking up at everybody, you know. And I played basketball, and let me tell you, how many of you know it's not much fun to play basketball as a little guy? Basketball is for the tall guys. Alright? And I used to always dream of dunking a basketball. Man, I'm going to tell you, the first time I was ever able to dunk a basketball, I felt like I was 10 feet tall. I'm telling you, I love it. I mean, it felt so good. But there was a time in my... See, I was growing, but God knows how fast we need to grow. Sometimes you grow slowly. Sometimes you grow quickly. But you can't control that. But you have to trust the fact that you're getting your rest and you're eating right and you're doing those things, that you're going to grow. Some of you are going through a season right now where you feel like you're going through a dry spell. It's okay. You're growing even if you don't feel it. Even if you don't think you are growing. Okay? So don't give up hope. Don't give up faith. Okay? Alright? It says, and also, now let's go back because I want to show something else. I learned something as I was studying for this message. The call according to his purpose. The word purpose, his is not in the original text. It is called to according to purpose. To purpose. The word purpose here is prothesis. In every other rendition of that word in the Greek, it is the word showbread.